giant morgue.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
Pepper, are you sure you want to leave this hospital?
To become a nurse was a little girl's dream. But in the end, I don't feel that useful. I want more. I want to make things change.
You should be proud of what you've achieved. This hospital represents hope for many people in need of help.
Maybe you're right. But at the moment, I feel like we're just a cemetery waiting room.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
Yes, Doctor?
Please, could you point me in the direction of the morgue again?
It's the large boarded-up building behind the hospital. You can't miss it. The key I gave you will open the small back door to it.
That's all for now, Nurse Crane, thank you. Good evening, Nurse Brannigan.
Good evening, Doctor.
Why does Dr. Tippett's claim you're the main reason he keeps working, despite his fatigue?
If it wasn't for him, I probably would have left the Pembroke years ago.
Dr. Tippett does not think of you as just a nurse anymore, does he?
If you're suggesting he's not taking my gender into consideration when it comes to medical practice and knowledge, I really hope he doesn't.
I'm not familiar with all the staff yet.
Brilliant professionals, most of them.
Most of them. Is there a problem I should know about, Nurse?
It would be inappropriate for...
Is there anyone that stands out?
Well, I have never met someone as dedicated as Dr. Tippett's. He should be a standard for us all here. If only he were younger.
Why should his age be a problem?
I guess it's fair to say he's always pushing himself to the limits. He just doesn't know when to stop and get some rest.
Nurse Brannigan, if you do know...
No. I may disagree with some conduct.
Goodbye, nurse. Call me if you need assistance. Good evening, Mr. Cox.
Dr. Reed. Still working at night, I see. I like that.
And why is that?
People who don't sleep at night always seem more alive to me. More interesting, one way or another.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. I believe we're going to be colleagues.
Reed? Yes, I've been informed about your arrival. I'm Waverly Ackroyd. Welcome aboard, I suppose.
Does my arrival inconvenience you in some way, Dr. Ackroyd?
Let us just say that I don't particularly share Dr. Swansey's enthusiasm for hiring you. What we need here are reliable professionals, not overrated dabblers.
It seems you have bad memories of your military service.
I refuse to see this industrial slaughter as scientific progress. War only reveals the worst in men.
We can at least agree on something, Dr. Ackroyd. I don't know what you've heard about me, but I have already proved my value as a practitioner.
I don't question your skills, Dr. Reed, but your motive. Is it money, fame, or are you truly dedicated?
And what exactly is that supposed to mean?
I served in the war just like you. But unlike you, I did not use the wounded to play the modern sorcerer.
Be careful what you insinuate, Dr. Ackroyd.
I only want you to admit you used those men to improve your theories.
This is ridiculous. My blood transfusion technique saved many lives, and you know it.
You see? That is exactly what I hate about people like you. You avoid this kind of accusation instead of facing reality.
Do you need my assistance?
Not at all. I'm sure that you are used to gaining people's trust with your impressive skills. Well, it will not be the case with me.
If you have a problem with me, Dr. Ackroyd, please feel free to tell me.
Dr. Swansey has imposed your presence on this hospital without asking anyone's advice. The benefit of his position. But I don't agree with it.
I know we've never met before, but I believe this hospital could use all the help it can get. You will agree with that, I'm sure.
Oh, but I have heard about you, Dr. Reed. Of course, you can't say the same about me, since I have not wasted my time courting the press.
Aren't you too old for such jealousy? It really won't do you any good, you know.
Don't be ridiculous, Dr. Reed. A simple glance is enough for me to know you have nothing for me to envy.
If you have a problem with me, Dr. Ackroyd, please feel free to tell me.
Dr. Swansea has imposed your...
I know we've never met.
Oh,
Aren't you
don't be ridiculous.
Thank you for your time. We'll talk later. Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Reed. May I help you?
I don't know if a third opinion is needed. Your colleagues are already arguing about my condition.
I see. Would you mind telling me more about your situation?
I'm Harvey Fiddick. All I want is to get me bloody arm fixed properly.
Tell me about the doctors who are arguing about your case.
Strickland and Aykroyd. They both want the best for me, but there's a lot of pride there. Doctors are no different from carpenters, it seems.
What do you mean?
I often had professional arguments with rivals on a building site. Difference is, I disagreed about wooden nails, not flesh and bones.
Are you satisfied with your treatment here?
Well, it's clear that I've chosen a bad time to be injured. Forgive my bluntness, but you seem overwhelmed by cases of the flu.
I won't lie to you about it. I'm afraid we are.
Are you sure you don't want to operate yourself, Dr. Reed? I have the feeling you're very capable. And your colleagues seem to think so too.
In other circumstances, you would be right. But for now, I don't think I can take on the responsibility. My apologies. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Fiddick.
I'm just a regular guy waiting to get his arm fixed, so I can return to work and to my family.
I was more curious about what you were doing before being hospitalized.
I'm a carpenter.
Goodbye for now, Mr. Fiddick. I'll see you later.
You always knew the words to calm the children, Ellen. Okay. A blundering idiot.
Good evening, madam. Can I help you?
It's my son who needs you, sir.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed. How can I help your son?
I'm Beatrice Goswick, mother of Mortimer Goswick. Could you check on him, please, Dr. Reed? I've heard much of your talents as a physician.
What do you think of your reception here? Any complaints?
I have had the uttermost reservations about this hospital since we arrived. But we had no other choice, considering the state of emergency.
Is there something in particular that's bothering you?
Some of the staff were not especially welcoming. I suspect they're not accustomed to dealing with patients of such social standing.
What can you tell me about yourself, Mrs. Goswick?
Not much to say. Just take care of my Mortimer and I'll cover all the expenses. That's all that matters.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick. Good evening. I'm Dr. Reed. Can I help at all?
No,
Really? Why are you here, then?
I don't want to talk. My throat hurts too much.
I suppose that this pain is the reason you're here. Is someone taking care of you?
Yes. And no.
Could you at least tell me your name, sir?
Mortimer. Mortimer Goswick.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Goswick.
I don't want to talk, Doctor.
How painful is your throat, Mr. Goswick?
So painful I'd rather not talk at all, Doctor.
I'm sure you realize a doctor and his patient have to communicate, sir. Would it help if I gave you some paper and a pen?
Not really.
I see. Then maybe it's not just your throat that hurts, Mr. Goswick. Perhaps your sore throat is just the consequence of something more hurtful.
Yes, maybe. But I don't want to talk or even write about it now.
Why did your mother have you hospitalized here? She seems convinced this is a bad hospital.
My mother just wants the best for me. She won't rest while I'm here. She'd go all the way to hell and back to help me.
Is your mother bothering you? As your doctor, I can ask her to leave you alone if you would prefer.
That's tempting, Doctor. But you have no idea what my mother is capable of. She would tie herself to my bed if you asked her to leave.
Pembroke Hospital may look unorthodox, but rest assured you're in good hands here.
It's not me you have to convince, Dr. Reed. It's my mother.
I have to go now, sir. But don't hesitate to contact...
I'm all right. Don't waste your time with me.
Good evening, Doctor.
Tell me more about your arrival at the Pembroke Hospital. What gave you such a bad first impression?
The ambulance driver was quite rude, for a start. And that nurse, Miss Hawkins, seems to have quite a dubious attitude.
What do you mean?
She managed to secure a bed for my son despite the epidemic. It was a relief, but it wasn't cheap.
She charged you for a bed?
Yes, and I paid without question, considering the urgency of the situation.
I share your concern, Mrs. Goswick. Be sure that I'll talk to the people involved.
I don't expect compensation, Dr. Reed. But I'm aware such behavior would not be tolerated in other hospitals.
What can you tell me?
Not much to say.
Are you really that rich? Most of the patients here are of a more humble origin, if I may say so.
Yes, thanks to my husband. May he rest in peace. I can cover any needed medical expenses.
May I ask if you have an occupation, Mrs. Goswick?
I'm a teacher by profession. I teach young women who are more ambitious about their futures than their families.
Goodbye, Mrs. Goswick.
Good evening, sir.
My sweet girl. Reads me like a book. I'll never see anything from her.
Good evening, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Nurse Hawkins.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Doctor. I believe we're going to be working together.
Dr. Reed. Dr. Swansea informed us of your arrival, but I could not dare to believe we'd have such good fortune. Such an honor, sir.
Thank you. And you are?
I am Thoreau Strickland, Dr. Thoreau Strickland. I'm a great admirer of your work, Dr. Reed.
Please, could you tell me something?
I'm a great admirer of your work concerning blood transfusion, Dr. Reed.
I based my technique on my mentor's research. He helped me perfect my method. What is yours?
I'd rather not talk about it. For now, it's just theories and first approach. My process is purely experimental. and unsuccessful.
As long as you're cautious and methodical, you may remain empty-handed, but you won't fail.
You're not the first one to warn me, but I am convinced knowledge is the main weapon against the ravages of this epidemic.
What made you choose...
I'm not ashamed to admit you and your work have inspired...
I'll give you some advice, but understand that nothing beats practical experience, which can be exhausting and solitary work.
Of course, sir. And don't worry, I will never allow myself to be a burden.
Tell me more about your willingness to experiment with new medical techniques.
Harvey Fiddick is a patient suffering from a severe injury that could cripple him if not treated correctly. I'm convinced your blood transfusion technique could help him.
What is it you really want? To save him, or to prove your point?
Fair question. I want nothing but to save my patient, Dr. Reed. Especially since I know Mr. Fiddick's story.
Tell me Mr. Fiddick's story.
Our first diagnosis was compromised because Mr. Fiddick lied to us about the real origin of his injury. He first claimed it was an accident.
But why would he hide such crucial information from us?
Because he is a proud father, ashamed of putting his children at risk because of his own negligence.
This personal involvement could also appear to be a lack of impartiality.
I agree. But that does not excuse Dr. Aykroyd's behavior. A man who did not even take time to converse with his patient.
Do you think keeping his distance was a mistake?
All I know is that I'm taking care of human beings with desires, hopes, and fears.
Goodbye, Doc.
Nowadays.
Fear and disgust on every street. The daily routine.
Good evening, Mr. Hampton. How do you feel?
Dr. Reed, is it? Oh, sir, I must apologize for my behavior.
What do you mean?
I was not myself in the factory. Fear and exhaustion made me say awful things to you, I'm afraid.
You remained perfectly nice and polite. A little delirious, perhaps. But who wouldn't be after enduring an abduction?
Thank you, Doctor. That's a relief. Now all I need to do is rest and return to my flock.
How do you feel, Mr. Hampton? Medically speaking, I mean. You're in good hands here. Dr. Swansea is well versed in...
Thank you, sir. I believe all I need is rest.
Goodbye, Mr. Hampton.
You were our sorry, Dr. Reed. Here again. It's locked.
balls of Mars. Fortifiers. As popular as they are ineffective. But they do contain iron tartrate, and that might prove itself useful. Behavior is similar to the infected William Bishop. Must be the same strain. This sickness moves faster than influenza. This key will surely grant me access to the basement. I cannot enter. These scowls feed from corpses and the husks of animals. They're not after blood. It's locked, all right. Mr. Connor's injuries don't match the report. I'd better look into this. Traces of a pinkish foam at the corner of the lips. Some sort of drug overdose, perhaps? Multiple abrasions and scarring on the arms and legs. Old and distinctive injuries of a sailor or a fisherman. The chest was originally opened to perform the operation. The sutures are clean, but the chest has been reopened. A puncture over the left lung, possibly a chest tube insertion. Not the cleanest work, but I think it was successful. Signs of internal bleeding. So, Dr. Tippett's anesthetics were incorrectly dosed, causing the patient's death. And then, he tried to operate on him again. Tippett has made an egregious error. It's time we talked. Scowls can be so ferocious. I'm not sure I can defeat them without becoming stronger. To drink blood is so tempting. Good evening, Miss Howcroft. How are you tonight?
I need blood, Doctor. Warm, rich, vibrant blood.
And why do you believe you're a vampire?
I don't need to believe anything. It is what I am. It is what I feel within this hollow shell of flesh.
I see. Have you ever heard of Cotard's syndrome, Miss Howcroft?
Never.
It's a mental illness discovered by a French neurologist named Jules Cotard. The affected patients are delusional. They believe that they are putrefying, that they are dead, a ghost or a ghoul. Or in your case, a vampire.
Delusional, you say? Oh, sad and petty mortal. You can't even begin to understand the concept of immortality. And you think it is I who am delusional.
I'll leave you, Miss...